my name is Ilva Tare. I'm a Senior Fellow at Atlantic Council's Europe Center. Welcome to Balkans Debrief, our new interview series on recent developments in the region. The EU Council Summit, which took place last week, was a disappointment for the countries of the Western Balkans, given the high hopes that the Ukraine war might revitalize the EU enlargement agenda. Accession talks for North Macedonia and Albania are still stalled. No visa liberalization was announced for Kosovo, and no candidate status was given to Bosnia. For their part, EU leaders seem to be talking more and more about a European Geopolitical Community, a vision for Europe that is distinctly less than full membership, rather than actual enlargement. North Macedonia has been a candidate country for 17 years. It is being asked to modify its constitution a second time, this time by Bulgaria, which last Friday lifted its veto with heavy preconditions. Meanwhile, Albania's membership prospects are on hold, held hostage by the Macedonian impasse. Will North Macedonia bend to Bulgaria's demands? Will Albania be able to decouple from North Macedonia and receive unanimous approval from EU member states? Who is responsible for Western Balkans enlargement stalemate? To discuss all this with me are two colleagues, Maja Piscevic and Damir Marusic, Senior Fellows at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. Welcome to Balkans Debrief.
Thank you, Ilva.
Thank you.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about next steps? What is the state of trust of the European dream in the Balkans and how to keep it alive? What happens now that Bulgaria lifted its veto, Maja?
You gave me a tough question. Well, I can tell you, being here in the region and speaking from the region, it's really hard to feel any optimism or enthusiasm within this community. It is hard. EU has raised some expectations. We heard some announcements. We are really, really disappointed that Albania and North Macedonia are not moving forward, at least for now. We don't know what's happening and what will happen. We are really disappointed that Kosovo hasn't got a visa liberalization. For some reason, we all believe this will happen. For Bosnia, I don't know. I'm not sure how much that would mean to Bosnia before the elections, this symbolic gest at this particular moment. But I guess some expectations were created there as well. So it's really hard to be optimistic at this moment. The question is how to behave now, how to think about the future and what needs to be done. We heard many times about the strategic patience that's being expected from the Balkans countries. And as Ramzilani famously said, I don't know about this strategic patience. I know about strategic action. And now the question is, what kind of action can the EU take and what kind of expectations has it created within the Balkans? Strategic action for the Balkans that I see as the only way forward is regional cooperation. But I'm sure we will talk about that.
And we will talk about that later. Damir, your skepticism kind of won this time.
Yeah, don't say that. That's terrible. But yes, I mean, I've been quite pessimistic about this whole process for quite some time, and not much really changes in this. Everything Maja said, I concur with. The only thing I will add is that there has been one significant change, which has been the lifting of the Bulgarian veto. The way it was done, though, is not something that instills confidence and optimism in the process going forward. Because the deal that was, the lifting of the veto was done in such a way that a lot of the responsibility now for unblocking the accession process falls on North Macedonia. With at least the proposal that seems to have leaked a little bit that led to this veto being lifted foreseeing that Europe would then enforce a lot of Bulgaria's demands on North Macedonia. This is very much not in the spirit of how enlargement has been done before, and it's very much not in the spirit of the enlargement process right now. So there's a lot of very bitter feelings, especially in North Macedonia right now, but as Maja said, all across the region from what I can tell.
Well, we have seen the Balkan leaders' reaction following the summit in which they expressed disappointment, while the EU also reinforced in front of the EU leaders the regional cooperation. What is the best way forward for the Balkans? Regional cooperation framework. There is the Berlin process, Open Balkans initiative, and there is a little bit of fight who is who and who owns what. Maja?
Yeah, and I think that fight, Ilva, is actually the worst possible scenario in the future period. Because, when you look at both initiatives, they're both going toward the same direction. And that's introducing the four freedoms of the European Union within the Balkans and preparing the Balkans for the entrance one day, hopefully. As Prime Minister Rama said, I will be happy to join in the next century. Hopefully he's not right. But using precious energy and time in talking about the advantages or disadvantages of one or the other really takes the precious energy and time that this region really needs to use to look better on how they can join forces, how they can join energies in order to prepare for the economic challenges that are definitely facing this region. I mean, the whole Europe, but we're talking about the Balkans now as of this fall. And that's why I think that we should really be open to all positive moves and then, test both initiatives. Because the only way we will know which one is better, to say so, is by the results. It's very easy. So testing the initiatives and testing the efforts will show us which one is better. And hopefully, at the end of the day, the two initiatives will just, as we say, marry, and go where we all want to be in the Balkans.
And by testing, you mean participating first. So the whole 6 countries of the Western Balkans should participate in the initiatives.
Ideally, yes. I mean, we know that on the ground, that doesn't look that simple. And there are many challenges. But at least what the Open Balkan can do at this point is really insist on inclusiveness. And not only in words, but demonstrate how this could work. Show results for the existing 3, hopefully soon 4 members of the Open Balkans, but also be open for the Berlin process 2.0 if it gets relaunched or revitalized, which, as we heard in Berlin when Damir and Jorn were there, they sound committed to relaunch it by the end of this year. So we shouldn't be hopeless about this, but just the opposite. Open and wait and see how we can work and join the forces because that's in the best interest of this region.
So, Damir, what's the best way forward for the regional cooperation?
Again, as you know, we all work together, and so we share very much the very similar analysis on a lot of this. I'll just add one thing: this initiative, this European political community that's being mooted now by the French and by Charles Michel and even by indirectly by people at EEAS. What really we are looking at is, I think, the shape of relationships between the central integrated parts of Europe and its periphery. I think it's important also not to be completely cynical about this, that this is, in fact, just a permanent holding pen. It may end up being that, but we really need to treat whatever the Europeans are willing to do in terms of helping foster regional integration among the countries themselves, but also among all countries and Europe, the core of Europe, be that on energy, be that on any other parts of the economy, be that on security. And basically anything that's on the table should be taken advantage of fully. I think there has been too much energy spent on worrying, as Maja said, about which is the correct way, which is the right way. We really need to be looking for ways to make progress and not let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Maja, you're joining us from Belgrade. So what is Serbia's and EU sanction position right now against Putin? In your view, what should the Serbian government do regarding the EU sanctions against Russia?
Well, you asked me for my view, and my view is that Serbia should align with the EU foreign policy, because that's what we are supposed to do. And actually, my fear now is that any further postponement of this alignment is working against Serbia. And I'm not sure that time is our ally anymore. That's my biggest fear right now. What's the sentiment here? It's so complicated. I mean, there is so little knowledge, so little understanding about the situation and about the options that we are facing right now. And part of the problem is our media, where we get channeled information in contradictory ways. Part is to blame our government for not communicating regularly and openly about the options that we have. Part of the civil society, which may be taking a more prominent voice in this, but nevertheless, whatever the cause is, or the primary cause, the situation that Serbia is in now is really, really worrisome, because we don't know when the next government we will have. No one knows that. I don't think even President Vučić knows this at this point. We have some repeated elections. And if we are waiting for the new government to make this decision, whatever this decision may be, it might take from 2 weeks from now until several months from now.
Mm-hmm. So, Damir, who benefits from this reluctance from the side of Serbia?
I mean, obviously, I think Russia benefits from it. In fact, it's just a means of both fragmenting the region. It is a means of showing the powerlessness of the European Union and the West more broadly to basically have the kind of cohesion that's necessary. But to build, I mean, again, Maja is absolutely correct. I think it's a bad situation for Serbia internally, but it's also an opportunity at this point for the Europeans to take the initiative on this, to not let Mr. Vučić completely off the hook on this. Prime Minister Rama of Albania has made all sorts of comments saying that Serbia shouldn't be pushed too far, but I'm not sure that is the right way. At the end of the day, there's always been this fear that if any sort of stronger position is offered to the Serbs, they will just dig their heels in and disappear. But the fact of the matter is, as we talk about the region moving forward, there are no alternatives to the European Union. There is no alternative to the broader West. And a little bit more additional pressure, and by a little bit, maybe I mean more than just a very little bit, nothing symbolic, but in fact, real concerted pressure that is constantly accompanied with carrots and messaging saying that Serbia's future is in Europe. Nevertheless, I think pressure would be a very good thing here. And it really is in Europe's court to exert this pressure and not worry so much about the negative externalities that might happen in the immediate term if they do.
So, Maja, how was received what Rama said about not pushing too much Serbia to join the EU sanctions, and that in 3 important occasions has already joined EU?
Yes, Prime Minister Rama's speech in Brussels is anthological in so many ways. You know, I read him times and times over. And in a way, it's also the title of the speech could be "The Emperor is Naked." You know, the way he spoke about the EU, about the failed promise, about individual countries as being the kidnapping, the process of the European enlargement. I mean, this was the most powerful message for me, that level of, I would say, disappointment, not even cynicism, but sincere disappointment and disillusionment. And, he spoke also about the political or geopolitical community. But in fact, I don't know, maybe you and Damir know more about the geopolitical community. I haven't heard anything. And I did expect, to hear something. On the pressure and the position that Prime Minister Rama is taking towards Serbia, I have to say I agree with Damir, because, I'm not sure that although his intentions are definitely the best, but I'm not sure that this helps Serbia. Serbia should be encouraged to do the right thing. And there is not an endless period of time for doing this. So I think that a real friend would say maybe this in public, but at least when they're alone should say, listen, help this region, help Balkans. We all need you as part of our group. Just do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Damir, about the French President Macron's idea of the geopolitical community, is there any risk that this project will cast a shadow over the enlargement process?
I mean, the answer to that is what enlargement process and what kind of shadow? How much of a darker shadow would you like cast over the process than exists right now? So again, perhaps it's a little out of character for me to try and be optimistic about this. Maya's right. We haven't seen what it is. It's a bunch of intentions. There was a non-paper floating around, again, which was incredibly general, which basically laid out the principles that this is not an alternative to enlargement. But as we see, enlargement is basically stalled. So it's fine that it's not an alternative to enlargement. We need to see what, in fact, will come of this. Again, I think between the energy that we heard, the enthusiasm for relaunching the Berlin process on the one hand, and perhaps then broadening the scope of the European political / geopolitical community to include things like the Berlin process, if Europe were to, in fact, lightly institutionalize something like this on the level of leaders, not only of the Western Balkans, but perhaps of the other aspirant countries now coming together, having cohesive plans for integrating with the core, cohesive plans for energy security, for actual physical security, and that an agenda is brought to the fore and developed in concert with all these countries. That's not a terribly bad thing. The proof in the pudding will remain in the actual realization of enlargement. What are next steps? And as we said earlier, none of us are terribly optimistic about that right now.
Talking about next steps, do you believe that North Macedonia will bend to Bulgaria's demands? And what will happen with the decoupling of Albania from North Macedonia and the unanimous vote that that process needs from the EU leaders, Maja?
I really don't know. My answer to the question is I really don't know. And I don't know even if someone would ask me for advice in North Macedonia, as they wouldn't, but I wouldn't be able to give advice. I don't know how costly this is, because the North Macedonia has paid so much for this. And we're talking about the values of the European Union, and we get reminded so much about the values. But I guess that trustworthiness is a value, or should be a value as well. And EU has so heavily failed on being trustworthy to North Macedonia. When they were encouraged to reach the deal with Greece, the Prespa agreement, there were no caveats. They were not told, make the deal, and then we will try and see what we can do. It was a clear message, NATO and EU enlargement. And then it failed, and it failed, and it failed. And now it comes, it reminds me of the Cinderella story, fairy tale, which we all, learned when we were kids. Can I go to the ball? Yes, just do this and do that. And I mean, Cinderella at the end of the day went to the ball, and I don't see if North Macedonia will ever be allowed to actually go there.
Damir?
The truth is, all the ingredients are there already for decoupling to happen. The fact is that the veto has been lifted. The preconditions are for the actual substantive start of accession talks. So in fact, there's nothing stopping the Europeans from letting both Albania and North Macedonia get on with their business at this point. The problem is that any substantive work on North Macedonia's accession is dependent on making the requirements that Bulgaria has set for them. So their process will be slowed down in a big way. I would, in fact, if you're asking me to be somewhat cynical about this, not that you are, but I would say that there will be an interest, in fact, to let Albania start as well as North Macedonia, see North Macedonia get stalled immediately on the Bulgaria question. And quite frankly, Albania has a much longer way to go than North Macedonia. So for the countries that are skeptical about enlargement within the European Union, this is a win-win. Both countries are technically starting their accession process, but in fact, nothing really changes.
I would like to close this conversation with a more hope for the region rather than what you're saying, Damir. But I really want to thank you, Maja and Damir, for this conversation. Really interesting points. I have many other questions, but I'm sure we will have other episodes and talk about the region. Thank you for joining me today in Balkans Debrief. You can follow us at AC Europe in Twitter and also join our conversation by using hashtag Balkans Debrief.